Remember to check out sarahsnakeshop.com for corn snakes and corn snake accessories, including corn snake morph books, t-shirts, notepads, masks, as well as other things.
Hey everybody, Sarah here. So today I'm going to be showing you guys combinations with Anery. For those of you who don't know, Anery is short for Anerythristic, and in corn snakes and in many other places, that just means that there is no red pigment in the snake. So corn snakes have three main pigments. They have a red, black, and yellow, and we are removing the reds today. And when we remove reds from corn snakes, it pretty much just gives us black and white snakes. There's a couple of different kinds of black and white snakes. There's Anery and charcoal. I did a whole video on Anery versus charcoal not that long ago, so I'll link that above for you guys if you want to check it out. I'm not going to get into the whole thing here, but I do want to show you guys what all of these Anery types, these combinations, look like. So I'm just going to kind of give you guys a slideshow of all of those, but before I do, really quick, just remember, like, subscribe. If you like corn snake content, I do this every week. I do mostly morph deep dives. We're also going over corn snake book that you may or may not see in your local pet store, and I can let you know if those are worth buying or not. And we also do some other fun things on this channel, such as educating on how to breed snakes and keep them and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, please subscribe and follow along with us. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hop into the video.
So the first snake that we're going to look at is just the plain old Anery corn snake. This is a hatchling that I have up on the screen right now. And when they hatch out, they're just straight up black and white, usually a pretty stark color contrast, no matter what they will look like as adults. Some adults will lighten up, some adults might have sort of a more brown in their saddles, and then some will also stay this like stark black and white, but they all usually hatch out this stark black and white as babies. The first combination that we're going to look at is the Anerymelonistic with the Anerythristic, and Anerymelonistic takes away all of the melanin, all of the black pigment. So what we are left with is just white and maybe some yellow sometimes, and then the skin tone. And so what you see when a baby corn snake, a snow corn snake hatches out, which is what the Anery and Anerymelonistic combination is called, it's called a snow. When a snow hatches out, what you see is a pink and white snake. The yellows take a lot longer to develop than any other color, so many babies will hatch out with a little bit of red pigment if they're going to get red pigment, depending on, of course, the morph that we're talking about. And they usually hatch out with a lot of black pigment if they're going to have black pigment. But the yellow pigment takes a lot longer to come in. So even if a corn snake is going to get yellow, they usually hatch out this like pink, and the pink is actually just the skin tone color, and then the white background. So the average adult snow is mostly just going to be that same skin tone on white, and then sometimes we'll develop some yellow. There are other types of snows, but I'm not going to go into details of all the different types of snows in this video. The next combination is Anerythristic and caramel. So the interesting thing about Anerythristic and caramel is that Anery kind of also takes out some of the yellow. So when we see a caramel corn snake, what we are seeing is a mostly yellow, sort of a yellow goldenrod colored snake. But for some reason, when Anery is mixed with it, that yellow is pretty much gone. So there's multiple different types of yellow that can form in corn snakes, and Anery does prevent some of that yellow. I'm not going to go over all of the types of yellow, but there are definitely two main types. One of them is carotenoid yellow and one of them is xanthophore. So xanthophore is what is being removed here, not the carotenoid yellow. The carotenoid yellow is what you will see coming in on the neck and the cheeks and sometimes the sides of corn snakes. So like I said, there's multiple kinds of yellow, and Anery does tend to remove some of that xanthophore as well. And that's why when you mix Anery with caramel, it just kind of looks like a weird looking Anery. The next combination that we're going to look at is Anerythristic with charcoal, which is another type of Anerythristic. And so when these hatch out, they actually look like just charcoals. When you see them as babies, they're coming out of the egg, they just look like charcoal, and then as they grow up, you start to see a more stark contrast in the coloration than you would normally see in a regular charcoal. And then you can kind of tell that, hey, this might be Anerythristic as well. And sure enough, That combination is called carbon, and it looks like a really just dark looking anery, or maybe a really high contrast charcoal. You will have to test breed this on occasion to double check and test it out and make sure that you actually do have both. But once you get the eye for this combination, you will also be able to identify them at a relatively young age. I would say that they are relatively easy to identify at about 6 months of age. The next one that we're going to look at is actually diffused plus anery, and this is called Granite. Granite, I'm not going to do a whole bunch of pictures of granites just because they're pretty prevalent, they're pretty easy to find, and diffused doesn't change anything with the color, it only changes the side and belly patterns. The one on the screen right now is also a mask, but it's really hard to find anything diffused without mask, so this is what you get. It kind of just looks like an anery, but the side pattern is completely like washed out almost, and the belly pattern will also be non-existent. The next combination that we're going to be looking at is Anerythristic plus dilute. This is also known as blue. This is most commonly seen as motley or stripe. All of the originals were either motley or stripe. I believe the originals were motleys and then stripe was added in. But now some people are separating out the dilute from the motley. And so what we are seeing here are some baby blues that just hatched out of the egg. And the next photo is an adult blue without the motley. They do not look quite as blue. Motley can actually really change the way that snakes look, the way different morphs and different mutations look. I can probably do a video on different motley combinations and the comparisons between the motley version and the non-motley version if that's something people are interested in. But the blue without the motley definitely does not look near as blue as a blue motley does. However, they're still very beautiful snakes and very interesting looking snakes in my opinion. The next combination we're going to look at is hypomelonistic type A, and this creates your typical ghost corn. They hatch out looking pretty light colored. You can definitely tell that they are an anery type, but they're a lot lighter than the average anerythristic. So if you happen to hatch both ghosts and aneries in the same clutch, then you will definitely be able to tell a very stark difference between the ghosts and the regular anerythristics. And then once they're adults, they often do continue to lighten up. Some of them will get a little bit more of that carotenoid yellow that kind of goes down the cheeks. That is a lot more common in ghosts. There are many different types of ghosts as well, such as corals and other combinations, and then there's silver queens. We're not going to go over all of the different kinds of ghosts in this video, but I did want to at least mention that there are a lot of ghost types as well that we could eventually go over. This combination that we're looking at is an odd one. This is actually Anery and Castagna. I'm not really sure if I would consider Castagna to be a hypomelonistic type, since most Castagnas do not lose that much melanin. It's almost just like a redistribution of the melanin instead. But regardless, the Anery Castagna does look a little bit like a ghost, almost, kind of like an almost ghost, and you almost might mistake it for a sort of a lighter colored anery. And even as adults, they kind of look like very interesting ghosts. Castagna is the word for chestnut in German, so to give you an idea, they're supposed to be more of a chestnut color, and that does shine through a little bit in the adult anerythristic types. They do kind of have a little bit of that chestnut look to them. The next combination we're going to look at is Anerythristic with lava, also known as ice. This used to be called ice ghost. Since we already have ghost as a term, it is just reduced to ice as a common term now. They look very ghost-like. Normally these will have a darker colored iris, but still a deep ruby pupil as hatchlings. And then as adults, they still have that ruby pupil and dark iris. That kind of helps set this apart from a ghost. A typical ghost corn will typically not have that so much. And you can also see that ices tend to have a little bit more of a bold color to them in comparison to just regular ghosts. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference though, and so test breeding might be needed for suspected ice versus regular ghost. The next combination we're going to look at is the combination with lavender. This is known as Moonstone, and these again just sort of look like really light colored aneries. They almost look like ghosts. But if you know of any lavender in the line, or if you know how to identify lavenders, it's usually easier to pick them out from regular aneries or any ghosts that might be in the clutch. Or if you just have regular lavenders in the clutch, usually the Moonstones will sort of stick out like a sore thumb when you have any other things in the clutch. And even as adults, they're a very sort of pale purple color. They don't have a whole lot of color overall. Lavenders typically have this sort of purplish hue to them, but then when Anery comes in, it sort of almost takes away that purple, so you just are left with a light gray. And since lavenders typically do not produce any yellow, even carotenoid yellow, at least not that we can see through the scales, then you're just left with a gray snake that never really develops any color at all. Next one on the list here is mask. And Anerythristic masks, when they hatch out, they look as dark as regular aneries, but at about a year old, you might see them starting to kind of look like ghosts instead. They do seem a bit lighter, but they will always have the dark melanin in the saddle borders and in the checkers as well. So even though they can get almost as light as a typical ghost, they are discernible from ghosts with the amount of melanin in them usually. And also, of course, we're looking at the pattern. The one that I have up on the screen right now is kind of a low expression mask, so it's hard to just pick out the mask immediately, but there's also other mask factors. I'm not going to go into everything that mask does in this video. I've done a mask video before that I'll link above for you guys. The next one on the list is motley. Again, I'm not going to probably show a whole lot of photos, but motley, of course, is the spotted pattern that could be a more striped pattern if you get a pinstripe, but the one that I have on the screen is just a regular Anerythristic motley. And again, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just the black and white with the motley spots. The motley by itself is not going to change a whole lot with Anery usually. The next one that we have is the Palmetto. And of course, Anery palmettos, they have the complete white with the little speckles. They still have those sort of blue irises, usually ruby pupils like a typical palmetto, but their speckles are only going to be black and gray. You're not going to see really any other colors. You might get some yellow in there if it's where the carotenoid would normally be placed, but otherwise you're just going to get the black speckles in there. The next one is the Redcoat Anery, and Redcoat is a very interesting one. I'm not going to go into exactly how Redcoat works versus Red Factor. That's a whole other video, but Redcoat by itself does not actually add reds. I've mentioned this a few times in videos, and when you're mixing Redcoat with Anery, what happens is those saddle blotches become much more bold and dark. So the one that you see on the screen right now is a female that I recently purchased, and see that she is overall much darker and her colors are much more dark and bold than the average Anerythristic type. The next one on the list is the Red Factor Anery, which is what some people might call the Coral Anery. These are aneries that usually came from like a coral ghost or a coral snow line, and Red Factor is in there. There's multiple different kinds of Red Factor. Again, I'm not going to go into all of the Red Factor craziness, but Anery Red Factors are gray, and they usually have some pinks in them that don't show up in a typical Anery. Red Factor mostly affects the ground color of the snakes. It can affect other areas, but with the ground color is more of a pink color, then you're looking at Red Factor for that. The next one is Scaleless. Scaleless Aneries, of course, are just Scaleless Aneries. They're pretty self-explanatory. You can see that they still have that typical black and white coloration, and they just don't have scales, and so they do kind of have what appears to be sort of a funky pattern. That's just what the pattern looks like under the scales. The scales actually do change the way that we perceive the pattern of the snake, and so when you take the scales away, the pattern looks funky, but that doesn't mean that anything funky is actually going on. The next one that we have is Strawberry Anery. Strawberry is a hypomelanistic type that does not add reds. I know that that's a very common misconception, is that strawberry aneries are always going to be red. When people see coral aneries or even like coral ghosts, they think that those are going to be strawberry, but they are not. Strawberry has now been proven to just be a regular old hypotype that maybe does have slightly more bold red in the saddles than your regular hypomelanistic type, but it really isn't anything to write home about as far as adding pinks. So what you see on the screen here is just a very nice looking Strawberry Anery corn snake. The next one on the list is Stripe, and of course it's a similar thing. We just have Anery mixed with the stripe mutation. Now, what is interesting about this is the stripes are the ones that are black. The stripes are the things that are black, and the ground color is what is white. And this is why when anyone asks me, can we ever have a completely black corn snake? It's hard for me to answer that question, because typically if we're going to have something that's completely black, that ground color needs to be able to be black, because we have not figured out a way to completely get rid of ground color on a corn snake. We can get rid of saddles by doing the extreme okatee thing, but getting rid of ground color is a whole other thing, and usually that ground color does include some white. So just keeping that in the back of your mind if you're ever thinking about completely black corn snakes, stripe may not actually be the answer. The next one is a very cool and very interesting one, and that is Anerythristic with Sunkissed. Sunkissed is a hypomelanistic pattern mutation. So it does both. It reduces melanin usually, and it also changes the pattern a bit, and it changes the placement of a lot of pigments. So you will see in this photo of the Sunkissed Anery that there's a lot of yellow, and it is specifically focused in the saddles. This is very common in Anery Sunkissed corns, and the reason for it is not 100% known. My suspicion is that these are actually green blotched, but I'm not 100% sure because it does happen in such a high percentage of Sunkissed Anerys that it could just very well be an aspect of Sunkissed that cause this pigment placement. So I'm not a scientist, and if anybody would like to do any of that research, I would love to hear about it. The next one on the list was a very difficult one to find photos of, but that is the Anery Terrazzo. Terrazzo, as many of you know, is a stripe-looking pattern mutation that originated in the Florida Keys. They also are usually very light colored. The light coloration could be a factor of just being from the Keys locality. Keys in general are very light colored. I did a whole video on Terrazzo that I'll link above for you guys if you would like to go check out more details on that gene mutation. The next one on the list is Anerythristic and Tessera. Again, I'm not going to linger on this too long because it's pretty obvious. We just have that black and white, and that is just in the Tessera pattern. The next on the list is Anery and Toffee. Now, toffee is a very uncommon one in the States, but there is some toffee more in the UK. Anery toffees look a bit like I would imagine a caramel anery to look. They just are more of a brown looking anerythristic. Some of that yellow does kind of show up in the browning of the saddles, as well as some yellow in the side pattern. So your typical Anery toffee is just going to look like a more brown version of an Anery. And that's what I would expect from a buff Anery and a caramel Anery as well. Even though I did not have very many photos of the caramel Anery or buff Anery, toffee is similar enough that you can at least get an idea of what a caramel Anery might look like as well.
Next one on the list is a microscale anery. Again, it's just the anery with the small scales. I'm not going to go into detail on that. And the next one is the buff anery. This is anery with the buff mutation. This is the only photo that I could find of a buff anery, and it's one that I actually own myself. So I do not have very many examples of what a buff anery looks like. However, I imagine it looks a little bit like a toffee anery or a caramel anery would, which we don't have many photos of those either. But you can see that this anery does have some yellow, golden brown color coming into the saddles. Even at a young age, this snake is less than a year old.
The very last one that we have on the list today is Ultra Anery. Now, what I have shown is actually Ultramel Anerys. So Ultra Anerys might be a bit darker than the ones that I show here, but Ultramel Anerys are going to be a bit more common than Ultra Anerys. So I figured that this would be just as much help for anyone than anything. So Ultramels, I'm not going to go over all the details of what Ultramel does, but it's ultimately a hypomelanistic type. I will link above the Ultramel video that I did a few weeks ago if you would like to check that out to learn more about Ultra and Ultramel. But essentially what you're going to see is a reduction in the melanin, and so much so that the pupils do get red, and normally those red pupils will stay through their whole lives. They just look like very translucent ghosts as adults. Some of them even appear very pink even though they are not pink. Again, that's more of the skin tone color coming out because of the melanin reduction.
I know that there were some things missing, such as the Christmas in Anery, which I don't know if anybody has any Christmas corns, and there's even a debate on whether or not Christmas is actually a gene mutation or if it was just like a selectively bred type of hypo. So it's no wonder that we can't find photos of any of them. There's also some other odds and ends that are really uncommon, such as the Anery buff combination. I only had one photo of those, or I had more photos, but that's because I own one of the snakes that is suspected to be buff Anery, and I couldn't find any other adult photos, so you may have to use your imagination. I imagine they will look very similar to the toffee Anery. And there were a few others here and there that were just difficult to find, so I'm sorry about any of those that I might have missed. Maybe in the future people will be posting more photos of things that they've bred. It's just a little bit more difficult now that Ian's Vivarium no longer has their like main forum, because a lot of people would post pictures in the forums that they would not be posting like on the main Ian's Vivarium morph list. So unfortunately a lot of those photos just are not around. Ones that I normally could have just gone and found buried in a forum somewhere are not there anymore. Regardless, thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing, because I'm sure that you have, right? And if you haven't, please do. And if you have any suggestions of which combinations you would like to see next, please let me know. I started with Anery because I thought that it was one of the more interesting ones, one of the more highly variable ones. I feel like if I started with Amelonistic, those are not near as like variable, because you're gonna have orange or white pretty much. Those are the only options when it comes to Amelonistic combinations for the most part. So just let me know if there's one that you would really like to see, and I might do that next month in the next morph deep dive that I do. This April is one of those really weird months that has 5 Fridays in it, and so we have kind of an extra video next week, and I'm probably going to be continuing the Q&A since I have so much more content from that I can go ahead and post for you guys, and that also gives everybody, as far as my snakes go, a little bit of time to get all the eggs laid, and I can actually work on making the egg laying video for you guys, and then the week after that we'll do another book review. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.